Morning, everyone.
Yes.
And just as a reminder to mute yourself if you're not speaking. And um, so we'd like to call this meeting of the APR and Advisory Committee to order, and we'll establish a quorum based on roll call. Mitchell Erickson present.
Alyssa Brown present.
Garrett Chan present.
Karen. I can see your microphone going off and on, Karen, but I can't hear you.
For some reason, there's like a delay, Mitch, just to let you know, on mine, I kept pressing it and it won't turn on and it took a while.
Okay.
FYI.
You're currently muted, Karen. Now you are unmuted. Would it be okay if I call Karen and then we can work in the background to see if we can get her sound to work? Are we okay with that?
Mitch, why don't I call her so you can continue the meeting?
Okay, all right, thanks. And then if the BRN staff could help her, that would be great, thanks. So we certainly have 5 people present. I just can't hear Karen saying present. But she said she's on the call. She texted me. So we have a quorum, and I'd like to move on to item 2.0, which are teleconference meeting general instructions, and I will let Mark take that.
This is the BRN moderator. I will be moderating the meeting. To facilitate public comment, we will be utilizing the WebEx question and answer feature. When the committee reaches a point in the agenda at which public comment is appropriate, the question and answer feature will be turned on, and members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by inserting the phrase, "I would like to make a comment," in the question box, which is typically in the lower right of your screen. I will then call on the individual and unmute their microphone. The individual will have 2 minutes to make their comments. I will not give a warning as your time approaches. I will mute your microphone and announce that your time has exceeded the time allotted. I will then move on to the next member of the public who has a comment. Please note that the question and answer feature is being used only as a means for members of the public to represent that they would like to make a verbal comment. This is not a means to ask questions of the moderator or members of the board. Such inquiries submitted using this feature will not be answered. When asking a question, please make sure the question is directed at the host, me, in the dropdown. If any attendees utilize a profane name, they will not be called upon to prevent members of the public from being subject to profane language. While you are free to express criticism or negative views, for the sake of the members of the public participating on this call, please do not use profane language when making public comments to the committee. I will provide a brief reminder of this approach at the start of each public comment item. Finally, when committee members or senior staff are not speaking, I would like to remind them to mute their microphone. If I detect background noise during this meeting as a result of unmuted microphones, I will interject with a brief friendly reminder.
Thank you, Mark. And now I'd like to go on to item 3.0, which is the review and vote on our last committee meeting minutes, which were from July 22nd, 21. And first I'll ask the committee members if they have any edits to those published minutes. Hearing silence, I'll assume that there are no edits. And so I'd like to have a motion to approve the minutes from July 22nd, 2000.
So moved, Alyssa.
Okay, a second. Just as a reminder, Risa, we don't have to public comment on the minutes, correct?
Please, if you would briefly, technically each agenda item.
Okay, sure. So I'd like to open it up, Mark, for public comment, please.
Public comment now. I will be activating the question and answer feature. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. Whoops, sorry. Oh, I did have it open. I'm sorry. There it goes. Okay, I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, I would like to make a comment. Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, I would like to make a comment. Committee Chair Erickson, there are no public requests for comment. Would you like me to close this window?
You may close the window, Mark. Thank you. I'd now like to take a vote on those minutes. Mitchell Erickson, yes.
Alyssa Brown, yes.
Jane Perlish, yes.
And did we get Karen online yet?
So, Karen, can you hear? Can you speak up? She's trying to call in.
Mitch, is there a way she can chat? Just put something in the chat.
I'm just going to call her and then she can. Hey, Karen.
Yeah, totally not board staff trying to reach out to her. They've called and emailed and she is not picking up.
Do you have her cell phone number, Loretta?
Yes, yes.
Karen, did you get a phone call from the BRN staff?
I've gotten phone calls from so many people in the last 5 minutes. I can't even tell you.
Oh, okay.
I've had my share of technical difficulties. I know that when you have difficulty using computer audio, the phone is kind of a good backup option. So maybe we can have staff try and reach out one more time and get a hold of her and walk her through the process of doing that. In fact, I can tell you right now, if you click at the top of the WebEx, I don't know if you're using the app or this browser version, but on the app, at the top, there's audio and video, and then in the drop-down, switch audio, and then you can have it call you or have, click view to call in and call in. That's worked for me when I've had audio issues. I think it's important that we get her on the line for quorum purposes.
This is Alyssa. I also sent messages to Danielle. I haven't heard back.
So, Reza, what I'm going to do is, Karen can certainly speak. I have her online on my phone for this particular agenda item. And then, Karen, I'm assuming you'll probably get phone calls from a 916 area code, and that's probably the BRN staff. If you could just work with them and see if they can figure out how to get you online. So just for the purposes of this agenda item, this is the board vote for approval of the July 22nd minute meetings. Do you want to respond? Karen? Karen? Oh, now I don't even hear her on the phone.
Maybe she's answering the other.
Let's just see one more time.
Staff that they are on the phone with her and they are working with her.
Okay, perfect. That's probably why she's not answering the phone. Can we pause this particular agenda item and come back to the vote, and we'll move on to item 4.0 on the agenda?
So real quick, Mitch, if we're waiting for her for quorum, we would actually have to pause everything until we establish quorum.
Yeah, we need to turn because Danielle's not here. Okay.
The next item is public comment for items not on the agenda, which won't actually require any action from the committee. So
Right.
I think it'd be fine if it's going to be a few minutes for staff to work out the issues with her. If we want to continue, on the other hand, if you want to take a break,
Oh, here, Karen's calling me. Sorry.
Sure.
Hi, Karen.
Hey, Mitch, this is a disaster.
So how about, do you want to respond to the approval of the minutes for starters, and then we'll work on getting you online?
Forgive me. What
Nope.
am I responding to in
We're-
minutes?
So we're on agenda 3.0, which is approval of the previous meeting minutes.
I approve.
Thank you.
Can we just confirm, Karen, are you able to at least hear the audio from the meeting?
Have you been able to hear the audio from the meeting, Karen, and can you confirm?
Or is it just
I
a
confirm.
microphone?
Okay.
Okay.
Mitch,
right.
I'm gonna ask that she hang up with you and get back on the line with my board staff. So
Perfect.
as we go into public comment for items not on the agenda, so that they can work with her and get this kind of technical difficulty issue solved now versus kind of going back and forth. I did hear from board staff that she actually got off the phone with them to call you to do this vote. And so if you can give her direction to work with board staff so that we can solve this issue before moving forward, that would be great.
Perfect. All right. Well, we have now completed agenda item 3.0. Karen, you heard that from Loretta, obviously. So I'll let you work with the board staff and you can come back onto the meeting when you can get there. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Bye. Oh,
Yes, this is Garrett. Before we
Yeah.
move on, I was wondering if I could take a moment of personal privilege.
Sure.
So I just want to recognize that we have had, and we are going to have, a few national APRN weeks. So in September 1 through 7, we had National Clinical Nurse Specialist Week. October 3rd through 9th, we had National Midwifery Week. Next week, November 7th to the 13th, we will have National Nurse Practitioner Week. And so I want to thank all of the advanced practice nurses for their hard work, especially during this pandemic. And I think it's great that I think we should recognize all of their hard work in California as well as abroad. And then the National CRNA Week will be coming up in January. It's the 24th through the 30th of 2020. So I just wanted to recognize advanced practice nurses.
Thank you, Garrett. And then we'll move on to agenda item 4.0, which is public comment for items that are not on the agenda. Just before you open the public comment, Mark, I just wanted to say that there was an agenda item that was from the public from our last meeting that is not on the agenda just because of a technical issue around the language. So I just wanted to apologize to the public member who brought that up at our last meeting in July, and that we will bring it forward to our next meeting with the appropriate language so that we can actually address it on the agenda. So I just wanted to.
And then Mitch, I want to jump in too and apologize as well. That was a miss on our behalf. That was not a miss on your behalf at all. And just really thank you for being so understanding with that. We will continue to monitor that and train up staff and just ensure that we're kind of taking in all the data. So thank you so much for being so understanding with that.
Sure, not a problem. So Mark, you may now open it up for public comment.
We will be opening for public comment now. I will be activating the question and answer feature. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Sarani Kwan would like to make a comment. 1 second, please. Go ahead, Ms. Kwan.
Moderator, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Appreciate the time. I would like to talk to you about home health orders. This is the craziest thing that has happened in my career in a long time. I'm Sarani Kwan. I'm the Director of Professional Practice and Nursing Excellence at Sutter Health, also a practicing nurse practitioner. And I'd like to talk to you about the issue that's come up through Sutter about clinical nurse specialists and nurse practitioners having home health orders rejected by home health organizations, because there seems to be a lot of confusion about the scope of practice of CNSs and nurse practitioners, specifically around home health orders. So I did talk to the California Department of Public Health, and I've reached out to the Department of Healthcare Services, didn't hear back from them. But we know that they allow licensed and legally authorized practitioners within his or her scope of practice to initiate home health orders. And I have the section code if anyone's interested in that. And I've gotten clarification on that from CDPH. I cannot find clear guidance on the BRN website that clarifies that CNSs and nurse practitioners' scope of practice will allow initiation of home health. And that's been pushed back on me several times now. So I'm coming to the APRN Advisory Committee to help me review relevant California statutes and regulations regarding scope of practice for CNSs and nurse practitioners as it relates to the ordering of home care services.
So just to clarify, Sarani, thank you for bringing that up. We did address this issue at our last committee meeting, and we forwarded all of the materials to the BRN staff, including legal counsel, so that it could be posted as an advisory or a FAQ on the BRN website. And I do not know the status. Clearly, if you search and it's not there, then the status is it's not been posted. So I'll let Risa and Loretta respond to when that might be posted, because it was approved at the last meeting and was to be taken up by BRN staff.
Lori, do you have anything on that? I don't.
Timeline on that. I can look into that and maybe get back to you by the end of this meeting today. And I can share that out, but I don't have a status right here in front of me on that.
Thanks, Loretta. Yeah, this has come up at several meetings in the past, so it would be nice to get the information that was approved posted because it provides all of the details and the laws, the legislation, both federally and statewide, in regard to ordering home health service, because that way providers and the public and institutions can reference it.
Mitch, as I am looking frantically for any follow-up on that, can you tell me who that email originated from?
It was all, if I recall correctly from the last meeting, all of those materials were actually already in, it was in a AIS on the last agenda. And after we had worked with RAISA around the language, and it was just a matter of the BRN process going through their normal processes to post the advisory.
Ringing a bell now. Got it. I will track that down.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah,
Sure.
Mitch and Loretta, it's item 5.0 from the last minutes.
Thanks.
Thank you. Perfect.
Were you finished?
Oh, I wanted to just thank
go
everybody. Yeah, I can actually just say I want to make sure that we have scope of practice added to that document, if possible.
Sure. Thanks, Ronnie.
Thank you.
Thank you. Janine Fulham would like to make a comment. 1 second, please. Go ahead, Janine.
Solemn, and I am an RN, and I'm the Director of Risk and Compliance for Providence St. Joseph Health Home and Community Care. And my topic is the same as Serrani's, in that we have been having great challenges trying to get clarity on the rule around ordering and referring to home health. It's clear in the Practice Act that the allowance of signing, approving, etc., is included in the stipulations for standardized procedures, but it does not say anywhere in there that ordering and referring is okay and part of their scope or allowed in standardized procedures. The challenge has been that both Title 22 and CMS regs require an order, and we need to have that clarified so that we can move forward on this. It's causing a great deal of confusion, particularly after the expiration of the PHE flexibilities. And we're having the same challenge with PA Medical Board, and would like this clarified. And so I'm 100% behind Serrani's comments, and we would like to be able to do this immediately, but I'd like it to be clear, something I can provide to physician providers, hospital organizations, tell them what they need their standardized procedures to say. Thank you very much for allowing me to talk.
Thank you.
Sorry. Committee Chair Erickson, there are no other public requests for comment. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to bring up to the BRN staff. So Karen called me back and she was trying to do the call-in feature as opposed to the video in feature. And it required a second password, which she doesn't have. She was asked for a second password. Is that something that someone can call her about?
Let's see if she called the 415-655-0001. The access code is 24981282504. And then her, I guess the attendee ID would be 79179.
Mark, I'm not sure whether that is
still
a generic attendee ID? Because my attendee ID is, I think, unique to me.
Yeah, it
And
says
it's a
here a new
different,
ID appears every 5 minutes.
but you might have just read off your attendee
Yeah.
ID. I don't know.
Right.
She might have her own separate one.
Oh, okay.
Macaulay,
used-
our chief of licensing, is on the phone with her currently.
Perfect. Okay.
And
That-
she is working with her to get her on.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much, Florida.
You're welcome.
So we will move on to agenda item. If the board is, or the committee is okay with it, I'd like to just skip 5 for a second and go to 7.0. Are people okay with that? Thank you.
Just real quick before you move on, Reza, do we need to wait and ensure that she is on before we can move on based on quorum?
Well, in order for the committee to take action, we would definitely need her participation. As it is right now, if she were listening in and then able to participate when the time comes for a vote, that would be fine. I'm not sure if she's actually listening, if she's actually on the line with Macaulay. So the probably safest thing to do would be just give it a minute, see if we can get her issue sorted out. And it may be kind of distracting for her to try to listen at the same time as working these issues out.
Let's give it a 5-minute pause while Macaulay works with her to try and sort it out, if everyone's cool with that pause. All right, thank you. So we'll just pause
Appreciate
till
that.
11:33. Thank you. Do we know whether we were able to resume a connection with Karen?
Karen is showing in our attendee panelist list. So she is connected to the meeting. I'm not showing anything else.
So, Raisa, if you're okay with it, if she just listens based on her presence on the participant list and she just responds via cell phone for voting, are we okay with that? She just identifies herself and indicates her vote.
We might have a connection with her right now. I did see a second Karen Carp pop up if she wants to test her
There
mute
it
and
is. I see it.
unmute.
Yeah, I see it. That might be her phone. Karen, can you hear us through either method?
This is Reza, Mitch, responding to your question. I'd suggest giving her just another couple minutes, see if we can sort it out. It looks like something is going on. If we can't get it sorted, then that's probably fine, as long as she's able to hear what's going on and we're able to hear her when she comments in via cell phone.
Oh, now she's off of one and only present for one now. She cannot hear, she said.
Okay, that's going to be an issue, so
Right.
we'll give it a few more minutes. I can say I sympathize because I've been in the situation where I had to kind of scramble to figure out how to make things work while things were taking place. So he's not alone.
The joys of technology.
Truly.
So apparently she can hear on the computer and talk on her phone, if that works for
That is
everyone.
completely acceptable.
Okay. All right. Well, then I will let her listen. Let me call her.
Hey, Mitch.
Yes. So we'll work with the fact that you can listen on the computer and talk from your cell phone. Does that work?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you so much. It was a balm to my ears.
Okay. All right, we have our quorum back. Let's proceed. All right, so let's move. I had asked the committee, we just wanted to jump to 7.0. If you wouldn't mind, Mark, just advancing to 7.0. Thank you. So this agenda item has to do with the fact that we have one NP vacancy that was previously occupied by Ruth, and we have a potential. I don't know exactly because Hillary was kind of on the fence about this, who is a midwife and also sits on the CMAC committee, and whether or not she was going to be able to saddle both committees. And so my reason I bring this up is the question is, do we just go with the current composition of the committee, which was originally 10? So 4 NPs, 2 CRNAs, 2 midwives, and 2 CNSs, or do we settle with what we have, and should Hillary just make a decision to step away officially and focus her attention on the CMAC, whether or not we would replace her position. And obviously the BRN staff would have to be involved to find out, solicit and identify that individual to replace Hillary should she make that decision. And then also about the current vacancy of the NP position, whether we should proceed with requesting to have that position refilled, or do we leave it vacant? Because there was I know there was a lot of debate originally when this committee was first created, so prior to all of us coming to it, around the composition of this committee. So I know that Alyssa has a lot of historical background, or at least exposure to that history, and wondered how the committee felt.
So Lisa, yeah, I know myself and BJ now attended a number of BRN meetings and actually advocated for having 2 from each group rather than 4 MPs and then 2 from the other 3, mainly because our mission didn't really need to have more of any one of them. So I would still advocate for that. I'm not sure what the process is about changing it at this point, and if it's more trouble than it's worth. So, I'd welcome some comments about the process.
So if I just understand, Alyssa, then you would advocate to, if Hillary steps away, that we certainly refill her position and leave Ruth's position vacant at least. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other committee comments? Go ahead, Garrett.
So I think we would have to look at the charter of the committee. I would be in favor of replacing the nurse practitioner, and only for the simple reason is that we all started at the same time. So when we all come off at the same time, there will be no continuity at all. And that is concerning to me. So at least if we replace Ruth's position, there will be some continuity going forward. And then again, if Hillary does decide to resign off of this committee, then we would have 2 people who would be able to continue on. So for me, I'm not personally concerned about the number of MPs. I'm just concerned about historical knowledge, understanding process, because we all, again, started at the same time.
Thank you.
Mitch, this is Alyssa. I mean, that's really why I was asking more about process, and I hear what Garrett's saying as well. So again, I would ask, what at this point it may not be wise to to change the composition, but if we ever did want to, how would we do that?
Got it. Okay. Any other committee comment?
To speak, but my mic is not cooperating with me. I mean, Garrett brings up a great point, and I have to agree that I think it would be nice to stagger people so that there are some people, previous members that are more aware of what was going on, and then new members that can just get on board, and we can kind of previous members can update them on that. So I would tend to agree with what Garrett said, that it would be nice to replace people that we've lost, members that we've lost at this point in time.
There was supposed to be someone here all morning and they didn't show up. So.
Okay. Sorry, folks. Background distraction. Any other additional committee comments? Karen?
None really. I agree with the comments that have been spoken.
Okay, thank you. So I guess the next step would be for me to reach out to Hillary then and just ask her what her status is to find out. And then perhaps the BRN staff could provide some indication about what the process would be if there were to be 2 vacancies on how to refill those vacancies.
So process would be is I would put this recommendation forward to our board. And if they choose to move forward with the recommendation, then we would then follow and go towards filling those positions. The board may choose to alter the charter at some point and then not go forward with filling those positions. And then we would do so at that point. So right now, a motion would come from you guys for this to go to the board.
Okay. And then just for clarification, I believe at a past meeting, it was not the last meeting, but the meeting before, Loretta, you had requested a list. And so I sort of threw out a statewide blanket list of people who might be appropriate candidates. And I believe I forwarded that to you. In terms of whatever input our committee could have or help with the BRN staff, depending on what the board decides.
So just for clarification on that, what would happen is very similar process to what we used for establishing the NMAC and the NPAC committee, is that if the board chose to go forward and fill those positions, we would put out a notice to all members that are licensed under that. So if we're looking for CNSs, we would send it out to every CNS and then go through an interview process and such to choose that. I know that the board members are appointed by governing bodies like the governor, Senate, Assembly, etc. These are appointed not in that manner, and they would be appointed by the board, and the board typically goes on a volunteer basis, not an appointment recommendation from a committee member or an advisory committee member. So we would go through that established process where we would give it out as an equal opportunity to all of those that are licensed in that content area.
And then would it go, just to clarify, would it go to like they did before, a subcommittee of the practice committee to then review the applicant volunteers and deciding and selecting from that? Would that be the way it would happen?
So what we did with the NMAC and the NPAC committee is it went to a subcommittee of a board. It did not go to a subcommittee of a board committee. So it went out to the board. The board then voted on 2 members that would look at the CNM applicants and 2 members that would look at the NMAC applicants, NPAC, applicants. And then that was put forth to the board for a final voting of appointing. So my assumption, and this purely assumption, is that it would follow that process as similarly as possible.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for the clarification. So at this juncture, I would like to make a motion, which is that I will reach out to Hillary Reyes to determine her status with this committee, given that she has not been present for several meetings, and that actually is something to reference in before I make this motion, sorry, is that, the charter does talk a little bit about participation in the committee, and Hillary has not been at this committee meeting for some time. So I will reach out to her in regards to that. So the motion I'm creating is that I would like to forward to the BRN board a recommendation that we fill any vacant current positions on the APRN advisory committee.
I'll second that. It's Alyssa.
Then we'll open it for public comment before the vote. Mark?
The comment now. I will be activating the question and answer feature. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Committee Chair Erickson, there are no public requests for comment. Would you like me to close this window?
You may close the window. Thank you, Mark. And I'd like to now bring up a vote for this particular motion. Karen, I'm going to start with you since you're on the phone.
Thank you. I vote yes.
Can you state your full name? Sorry.
Oh, so sorry. This is Karen Karp. I vote aye. Yes.
Mitchell Erickson votes yes.
Alyssa Brown, yes.
Jane Perlis, agree, yes.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll move back, Mark, now to agenda item 5.0. Thank you. So this is a discussion and possible action of the approval of summary and overview documents regarding all activities and actions of the APRN Advisory Committee. So just to kind of give a historical perspective for the public, there was a request by BRN executive officer for the committee to come up with a summary and overview of what its activities have been since its inception, since its creation. And because of potentially there being possible overlap or duplicative work between us and other existing legislative committees at the BRN, because there are obviously professionals on our committee that also are represented on these other committees. And so as people might recall, there were 2 motions brought before the board to sunset our committee based on some of those concerns, and both of those motions failed. The result of that was this request and it to be forwarded to the director of DCA in order to then make a determination about whether this committee will continue to stand or whether it will be sunsetted. the committee members of this committee all had an opportunity to contribute to this document. The document is in the supplemental materials and was reviewed, edited, and through the BRN staff, and then forwarded to the executive officer and legal counsel. And the document essentially states position in terms of the APRN's role and what, and there's a sort of historical summary of its actions over the course of its existence by meeting date. So there are just sort of summary comments around those meetings and what was addressed. And then there were 2 supplemental documents that were added, both of which were letters of support from statewide professional organizations representing both all of the CNSs, NPs, CRNAs, and midwives across the state. I will let the public know that I did have meetings with the leadership from all of those committees or those statewide professional organizations in an effort to just fairly wanting to understand their position on the existence of this committee and the value that it brings both to potentially to the BRN in what we're able as professionals to offer the BRN staff, as well as to the public in terms of representation of all the 4 professions across the state. So since everyone already had an opportunity to contribute and edit this document through the BRN, at this juncture, I just wanted to see if there were any comments from the committee, because the letter has already been forwarded to the executive officer. I do not know its status after the committee has a chance to comment, whether it has since been forwarded to the DCA director or if there's a timeline for that. So open for committee comments at this point.
This is Alyssa Brown. Just, thank you for putting all the comments together, and thanks to Jeanette and staff. I think they did a good job. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Any other committee comments? Sure, go ahead, Garrett.
Yes, thank you, Mitch, for putting this together. It actually is really enlightening, all the work that we have been doing, which very infrequently do we actually look back and see what we've accomplished. So that's great. I guess I'm just curious the status of this. So I'm wondering if, Loretta, if you have any updates for us.
It is still with board staff. It has not been forwarded on to DCA as of yet. We did want to complete this meeting first, get any additional feedback from the members. As you guys know, there is not supposed to be any conversation outside of publicly noticed meetings. So without that happening, I cannot move this forward without any direction at that. After the completion of this meeting, I will take any notes from this meeting and then send it together to go to DCA's director. I did want to give some points of clarification. I know, Mitch, we did update the AIS to accurately reflect the process that it occurred with the APRN. So I do want to refer back to that. Each year, the advisory committees will go that are not statutorily in place will go for review. It is not going up for sunset. It is going for review. And in fact, our NEWAC advisory committee will be going up for review in our November board meeting. And again, not for sunset, but for review. We are under statutory requirement in BC 271015, where the board is authorized to appoint advisory committees with permission of the director of DCA. Again, why this information gathering was requested and will be sent to the DCA director. And this is really just to ensure that we're continuing in the right direction. We're having goal attainment, cost effectiveness, and we're working towards the board's mission and the strategic plan. And so with that said as well, Garrett, to talk to what you had mentioned that it's rare that you look back to see what you've accomplished. And that's part of the process right here is we will, moving forward, treat this very similarly to our board committees where they do a goal attainment on an annual basis. And that is what our Education License Committee does. You can go back and look at that throughout the historic documents within our board, and you can see that. So we will be doing the very same process with our non-statutory advisory committees to ensure that they stay relevant. So this again is not out of the ordinary and something that truly is a process that should have been in place. And so we are bringing everything into appropriate processes going forward. Additionally, just to clarify, when you mentioned that it was brought forth the board twice and the motion failed twice to sunset, on the agenda items for the board, it was not again brought forth to sunset. And so when you do read the agenda item summary, it does say that the advisory committee was brought to the board for discussion and possible action regarding the continuation and the role of this committee. And so that was the agenda item. In May, the motion failed and the request was made to carry this discussion over to the next board meeting because our board members did not want to make a decision and without more information. And so I thought that that was really something that was appropriate for them to do. So that same exact agenda item went forward in August per the board members' request. And then there was an actual motion made. And again, not to sunset, but the motion was made and it didn't fail. The motion was made to maintain the APRN committee with a focus on CRNA, CNSs, and issues that affect all APRN groups to exclude nurse practitioner and CNM issues. So that is the motion from the board. So that is where you guys are now going to see an updated charter that will reflect that. Once I get the motion from the board on whether they want to continue with the same makeup, whether that be 10 members, 8 members, etc., then this would update and be included in that new charter. So once that board has had the input to update and make the new charter that now aligns with the motion, and so this was ratified by our board in August 2021, that the APRN committee does have a new focus now, and that focus is on CRNA and CNS and issues that affect all APRN groups to exclude NP and CNM issues. And so we will share that update with you, but it did not fail and we weren't put forward for sunset. We were put forward to make sure that everything was reviewed and in alignment with the current mission and strategic planning of the board. And then we will put this forward to DCA to now get their blessing. And once DCA gives us the blessing to continue with the path that the board has made the motion to go forward with, then we will be in compliance with the statutory requirements of BPC 2710.5, where we can continue to move forward with the APRN committee meetings, and you guys can continue to have carry that voice for California. And I thank you guys for participating on this.
Thanks for the clarification, Loretta. I only used the word sunset just because it seemed to fit the discussion. It wasn't a legal term rather than review. If based on the board decision around the focus, it would seem that there would, even though it's not a discontinuation of this committee, it would certainly alter the representation on the committee in terms of it not having NPs and midwives on it, given the potential overlap. So, if that's what you were stating, I just wanted to clarify that one particular issue, that the composition might change if that's the path that the board wants to take based on DCA input.
I cannot speak for what the board will decide. You guys
Right.
did make a motion in 7.0 to put your recommendation forward to the board, and I am sure that the board will take that into consideration when they make a motion on what they want to send to DCA. Just as a point of clarification, the motion that was made was to maintain the APRN committee with the focus on CRNA, CNSs, and issues that affect all APRN groups, to exclude NP and CNM specific issues. And so what that means is if there is an issue that affects all groups, there may be a benefit to have NP participation as well as CNM participation in this advisory committee. I cannot say that there's not a benefit to that, and that will be up to the board to decide. So I will move your recommendation forward to the full board. We will have the information that you provided of what your accomplishments were so far, and then we will establish an updated charter based on the board recommendation, and that will go forward to DCA for compliance.
Got it. Alyssa?
Yeah, thank you very much. And Loretta, you clarified some of it, because if we're going to look at issues that affect all APRNs, it would be wise to have representation from all. We just wouldn't apparently look at issues that are solely, for CNMs and nurse practitioners. And I just wanted, I don't know if this is appropriate to say at this point, but looking at the consensus model across the country, the trend is to go for APRN advisory committees in those states. And it's mentioned in the consensus model, so that there is a body in the states under the BRN that have representation from all 4 groups. So I'm hoping that will continue. Thank you.
It
Sure.
absolutely will continue. I can't say that it'll continue as a form as an APRN advisory group, but with the board, just because advisory group is not in statute for APRN, and we do have to have an annual review, and it does have to go through direction and approval. But the one thing to really kind of keep in the back of your mind is we do have a board committee that is the practice committee. And that practice committee is the place where APRN, all groups would come if that were to ever change. And we do plan on making that practice committee much more robust, and you guys will see the change in that committee going forward. So just stay tuned. Good things are happening.
Thank you.
Garrett?
Yes, thanks. In reflecting upon what's written in the agenda information sheet that's published for this particular action item, it says, that the motion was made to maintain the APRN committee with focus on CRNA, CNS, and issues that affect all APRN groups. And I guess I'm struggling with the concept of all APRN groups, only because there are things that may affect multiple APRN groups, but maybe not all APRN groups. For example, the conversation that we had in the meeting minutes, around home health care, and then the public comment for items not on the agenda. We would need nurse practitioners and clinical nurse specialists to comment on that, because it's a single issue that's affecting both groups. And so I guess I'm just struggling with the language of all. I think when multiple APRN groups are affected by the same issue, it doesn't necessarily have to be all APRN groups that have to be affected, that potentially this advisory committee can help with. So Mitch, as you're considering the motion moving forward, I'm wondering if the word all should be changed to multiple.
I can.
guess I have a question for you, Garrett. The motion was already made by the board, and the board put the motion to include all. This agenda item is discussion and possible action, approval of the summary and the overview document regarding all activities and actions of the APRN Advisory Committee. So this is not an agenda item that would address the motion that the board made. I could ask Reza for further clarification if you're doubting that, but what needs to occur here is a motion to move this information to the board or to the DCA director or both, as you wish, and then we would do further action based on the motion that comes out of this meeting.
I do want to give the public a little historical perspective, just to recall that when this committee was created, there was there was a CMAC, although it was not very active, and there was no NPAC. And so, all of the discussion that occurred before those two committees had been created about either pending legislation or legislation that even had been approved prior to the creation of those committees and before it was signed into law, we were really the only forum in which the public had an opportunity to discuss those particular items. Obviously, in the transition to the sort of the establishment and committee meetings schedule of those two committees, this committee was kind of like the only opportunity for the public to, draw attention to whatever it was that they wanted to talk about. So I just wanted people to recall that, our purpose was not to interfere with the activities of those two committees once they actually were seated, but it was really just to create a forum for the public to be able to talk about them, because there was nothing before that. They could have come up before the board if it was on their agenda, but just a reflection. I think Garrett's comment about the accomplishments of this committee is quite commendable. When you actually go through the document and read it, you suddenly discover, the number of things that we have discussed and addressed over the course of our existence with the BRN. So certainly want to extend a thank you to both the public's participation, but also to everyone on this committee. Alyssa?
I just wanted to, I guess I like the term all, just because if we continue, I really believe that when one of us advances or something good happens, it helps all of us. And so I think we've seen that meeting, these years. And I know that motion isn't going to change, but I just wanted to say that I think it's more inclusive. And if this, this advisory committee continues with CRNAs and CNSs and NPs and CNMs, it allows us to look together at some of the issues and how we help each other when we may be going through some of the same things. So thank you.
So before we make a motion, is there any other committee comments?
Mitch and Garrett, I didn't quite hear what was the other option for instead of all. Garrett, I didn't quite hear what you said earlier.
Multiple.
Multiple, okay.
And that is not outside to what Loretta said. That's outside the scope of this motion. So I appreciate the reminder. So the motion is just on the report. So, but I think it I would disagree a little bit with Alyssa. I think that having multiple groups, even though, for example, the home health orders are only affecting clinical nurse specialists and nurse practitioners, that if we go by all APRNs have to be affected by it in order for us to talk about it, then if you read the motion in the AIS, that's what it says. So it would have to affect all 4 APRNs in order for us to talk about it. So that's why I'm saying that multiple makes more sense than all, because there are going to be perhaps few issues that will affect all APRNs. Does that help you, Jane?
Yeah, but yes, it does. Thank you. But it seems like it's a matter of semantics. I mean,
Well, could be.
everyone has to participate and put in their input. I just have to think about, I mean, whether I think all is very inclusive. And I tend to lean towards that.
I
We're not dealing with it.
I guess, I mean, it's not something that we're going to fix today but it's something that we could bring up at a board meeting by calling into the board meeting and during the public comment period if there's something not related on their agenda. But I think what Garrett's saying really is that, you know, what if there were CNSs, NPs, and CRNAs that were all affected by one particular thing? Well, that's not everyone. That doesn't include the midwives. But should we be hindered from being able to discuss the particular issue if it only affects 3 of the professions and not 4? So that's really, you know, it depends on how you legally defined all versus some.
Yeah, and it's the perspective, I would say, Alyssa, that it might be relevant, because even with the home health, CNMs were supposed to be included at one point and they're not. So it may help them at some point.
I agree, and I guess that would depend on legal counsel's interpretation of ultimately agenda items on the future agendas of this committee. Is that, you know, if, for example, home health, I know that you know, CRNAs, for example, would love to have prescriptive authority, so that affects all of us. But it may be only isolated to one of their concerns. And so the question would be, is that something that we can discuss because it really affects everyone, even though it's a CRNA request, or is that only isolated just to CRNAs, and does it breach any of the particular rules around all? But I think that will be a future review issue. But I think that it's a good point to bring up at a subsequent BRN board meeting around the specific language, and maybe they might be open to altering if it's appropriate.
But as I said earlier, it's a matter of semantic, but I think it's really important to hear other people's opinion. And just because, I mean, you know, someone that is not involved in the subject matter may have some opinions or some things that they can see that we cannot see because we're so close to it.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll just briefly jump in. It's a good point. I appreciate Garrett bringing it up. Technically, if you read the word all literally, it is what it is. It may be that when the board made that motion, they had kind of more of an intent to not have it be read so strictly, but to be, you know, that this be a forum for issues affecting multiple, but not necessarily all groups. As of right now, we only have what was the language that was part of that motion. But as you know, you've said, I think it's something we can try to inquire from the board when this is discussed in the future, what their actual intent there was.
Perfect. Thanks, Rissa. Any other committee comment before a motion? I guess we'll open it up for public comment, Mark, first. Or should I make the motion first, Rissa, before we open up public comment, so that they know what they're commenting on?
I think that's usually how we do it. Make the motion, and then they can comment on the motion and or anything that's been discussed so far.
Okay. So the motion before the committee then is to approve the summary and overview document that's been written with the 2 attached letters from the statewide professional committees. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you.
Vanessa.
And then now we'll open it up for public comment, Mark. Thank you.
The comment now. I will be activating the question and answer feature. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comment. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Committee Chair Erickson, there are no public requests for comment. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, thank you, Mark. So we will vote on the motion before us. I'll let Karen start first. Karen?
Okay, sorry, Mitch. Yes. Karen Karp, yes.
Mitchell Erickson, yes.
Alyssa Brown, yes.
Jane Perlis, yes.
And the motion passes. We'll move on to item 6, please. Yeah, sorry.
This is Reza. Sorry for the interruption, and I'm sorry this got past me. When we were on agenda item 7, which was the filling of the vacancies, we made a motion. If I'm not mistaken, I think we didn't do a public comment period on that one, unless I just may have zoned out. But if I'm correct and we didn't do it, I'd suggest we just go back, hold it open for public comment. If there's no public comment, then the vote can just stand. That motion carried unanimously. If there is any public comment, we can check back in with the committee members and see if it may have changed anyone's mind. But this was, again, on the agenda item 7 to fill the vacancies on this committee.
I thought we did.
I could be wrong. I
did the
apologize.
BRN staff track that? I think we've opened up for public comment for every item so far, if my recollection is correct. Is there anyone on BRN staff that can validate that?
I was just told that they thought there was no public comment. So
Right.
that might have meant that it opened up, there was no public comment, and we closed it and it went fairly quick.
Right.
Yes.
That's what I think happened.
We did.
Okay. Thank
In
you.
that case, sorry for the interruption. Thank you. Just wanted
Sure.
to be sure.
So let's move on to item 6.0, discussion, possible action, review and discuss communication pathways for essentially inter-committee, BRN inter-committee collaboration and communication, so that we're not violating any of the rules around Bagley-Keenan Open Meetings Act. And the reason this came up was, we have members of this committee that obviously participate on the public side of other committees within the BRN, and an appropriate way for committee members to be able to voice, their concerns, comments, and how to communicate those between committees that doesn't violate those rules. Because if there's more than 2 members of any one committee present, it could be perceived as an unannounced public meeting. So the question is, is there an internal mechanism or some method that we might be able to apply in these situations where a committee member from this committee wants to make a comment on a posted agenda item, but can't do it in the public forum method? So how could that occur? And I guess this is really a question. We don't need to rehash Bagley-Keenan or the Open Meetings Act, because we've done that many times. So I'm just trying to find out a way that doesn't violate those things, that internally, there's a way that members of a committee can communicate with another committee.
This is Reza. Would you like me to just kind of jump in?
Yeah, please.
Sure. If you don't mind, I'd actually kind of like to, very briefly, I don't want to, beat the issue to death, but just briefly review the Bagley-Keene issue and where this is all coming from, and where we've kind of had issues in the past and where that derives from. Because as I've said before, this is, to most people, not kind of an intuitive thing, and there's been discussion about, free speech and being able to participate as a member of the public, which, you all are, but you've all taken on kind of a different set of responsibilities being members of a governmental entity. Give me just a moment here. What I'm trying to do, if possible, is share my screen. Can you all see what I've got up on my screen? It's the statutory text.
Mm-hmm.
So you all see Government Code Section 11122.5, right? Okay. So I appreciate you again bearing with me as I go through this. This is a section from the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. This is the section that defines a, quote, meeting for purposes of that act. The kind of starting point and where this issue derives is that anything that qualifies as a, quote, meeting of a governmental entity that's governed by the act needs to abide by certain formalities, including a notice having been posted 10 days prior to the meeting, public participation, etc. When we have members of, just say, this committee calling into the board meeting or calling into the Nurse Practitioner Advisory Committee meeting as public commenters and making comments, the concern is that we then trigger a meeting of the APRN Advisory Committee because other members of this committee may be listening to that board or committee meeting and hearing the comment that one of you might be making there. And the definition of meeting here, the reason I put this up, is that it's pretty broad and legally it's interpreted pretty broadly. A meeting is a congregation of a majority of the members at the same time and place to hear, discuss, or deliberate. So, discuss, deliberate, that's pretty obvious what that means. But keep in mind also that it even includes hear. So even if there is no back and forth amongst the members of this committee at that other committee or board's meeting, if there's members of this committee that hear the comment that's made, and if that comment has anything to do with matters within this committee's purview, it's potentially a violation. And so all of our board and committee meeting agendas have specific text that says, if you're not a member of this board or of this committee, you can observe the meeting, but please don't participate or vote or make comments. And that's not unique to the BRN. That's not just my own interpretation. That's pretty much across all of the DCA boards that are all governed by this same act. So that's where it's coming from. Again, I totally get that that's not kind of intuitive if you haven't really, considered the issue with that in mind. So with that said, if I can figure out how to get that. Trying to, there we go. So that's what we try to avoid. Now, I agree and I hear you that it's important that we have ways to kind of collaborate across the committees. And also keep in mind, this was not really such a prevalent issue when, as you said before, Mitch, the APRN Advisory Committee was kind of really the only forum that was out there for the various APRN groups. Now that we've got multiple, the NMAC and the NPAC as well, that's where we've kind of started encountering this issue that previously we didn't really have to think so much about. Now, to address the actual issue of how might we be able to collaborate, again, I would ask, in an abundance of caution, not to just call in as a member of, as a public commenter during those meetings. In order to facilitate collaboration, one way that comes to mind is if it's appropriate for the issue that's up for discussion, possibly a joint meeting. So our agendas that are posted at the very top, it says, for example, APRN Advisory Committee, and it identifies this committee that's going to be having the meeting. I could imagine, and this is not something we've done before because again, it's not been an issue in the past, but I could imagine if there is an issue of mutual interest and an issue that affects either all or multiple groups, as the board may determine, you could hold a joint meeting where all of the formalities that I mentioned about having a meeting under the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act are followed by both committees. So a notice is published 10 days in advance that says the APRN Advisory Committee will be meeting and say the NPAC or something like that. That's one way to do it. That I think would require a bit of planning. It would require, it might not be right for every type of issue, but it is an avenue that I can conceive if it's appropriate. Another option is for the right type of issue, you could, for example, designate a member of this committee to communicate offline with a member of another committee. So if it is an issue that, say, it's within the purview of the APRN Advisory Committee and it also affects NPs, this committee could discuss it during a noticed meeting, and then the NPAC could discuss it during one of their noticed meetings, and the designees of each committee could discuss and collaborate offline, and then come back and report in a noticed meeting to the rest of the respective committees. And that wouldn't be a violation of Bagley-Keene. That seems like, maybe a little bit less work and planning required, and probably a little bit more, just a simpler way. But those are at least two ways I can think of that avoid the issue of us inadvertently violating this issue with the Bagley-Keene Act.
Thanks, Raisa, for that description and clarification. Of course, there would be a third option, which is that if you change the composition of this committee, then if there were never more than 2 NPs on this committee, then that would never be an issue because only 2 NP representatives on this committee would ever speak or be present at an NPAC committee meeting.
I don't want to go too far on that. If, say, there's only 2 members, only 2 NPs on this committee, and they go into the NPAC and make a comment, well, there's only the 2 of those NPs in that other committee, but maybe the rest of this committee is listening in. And it's not, the Bagley-Keene issue is not limited to those individuals' background, whether they're NPs or not. It relates to whether it has to do with the subject matter jurisdiction of the APRN Advisory Committee as a whole. So if the APRN Advisory Committee includes NPs at all and deals with NP issues at all, then I think it would be fair to say that NP issues are within the purview of the APRN Advisory Committee, again, to the extent that they affect all or multiple APRN groups. So if it's something that's within the purview of this committee, just having, say, the NP members speak in an NPAC meeting or the CNM members speak in an NMAC meeting, that's not quite going to avoid the issue. And, I'm very reluctant to try to, count how many members are listening into a meeting at any one time. That's also, for one thing, difficult to do. Secondly, problematic because these are recorded, and if it gets posted, posted on YouTube or on our DCA webpage, even recording and listening to it after the fact is arguably in violation. So, you know, I really, I hate to be very hyper technical about it, but I mean, that's kind of why I'm here. So
Thank you for the clarification about that, because I thought I must have misinterpreted what you had said in previous discussions around this, around it was more, it was also there was a relationship to the actual professional that was participating in another committee meeting, as opposed to, you know, say it was Alyssa and myself and Karen, for example, who participated at an NPAC meeting. That would be considered a violation, even though Karen and Alyssa are not MPs.
So that's a good chance for me to clarify. Right, that's not, I hope I didn't give that impression. I apologize if I did. It's not about your and Alyssa's, you know, your individual background as members of this committee. It has to do with the purview of the committee as a whole. So let me give a different example that hopefully will help and not confuse you more. Let's say a member of the NPAC. The NPAC's purview is nurse practitioner issues exclusively. They don't deal with the other APRN groups. With the APRN advisory committee, it gets a little tricky because your purview is, you know, deals with the various groups. But let's say somebody who is a member of the NPAC has an opinion about something that's within the jurisdiction of the NMAC. So they are, say, a nurse practitioner and they're a member of the NPAC, but they happen to have knowledge or an opinion about an issue that affects nurse midwives. In that case, I think it would probably be okay for them to go into the NMAC, the Nurse Midwifery Advisory Committee, and make a comment that deals with nurse midwifery issues, because they're not making a comment that's within the purview of the NPAC. Does that make sense? But again, the APRN Advisory Committee, it's not quite so simple to kind of do that, because your purview is all 4 APRN groups. So even if you individually are only an NP or only a CNM or only, you know, one of the others, you're a member of a committee which the purview of which is all 4 groups. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Anyone have any questions?
So Lisa, can I ask you a question? So let's say that Mitch went to the NPAC meeting and I didn't go, and I go and talk to Mitch and ask him, oh Mitch, so what was the discussion like? What was this discussed in the meeting? Would that be a violation if Mitch kind of highlights some of the features that were discussed in that meeting?
It's
Because
I
that's
want
very
to.
realistic. I mean, some, you know, there's times that, you know, I mean, people can attend a certain meeting, but they want to be there, but they couldn't attend. So another person comes in and just happened to ask, you know, what was the highlights, what were discussed, and would that be a violation?
Yeah. I mean, it's a good question. It's a good example that kind of illustrates some of the areas where this gets a little bit kind of gray and muddy and hard to deal with, because of the fact that it is kind of a little bit muddy. And I always advise, you know, an abundance of caution and taking a conservative approach. The first thing I'll say is it's probably better practice if you just listen to the recording of that committee later on, rather than communicating offline with another member of this committee. With that said, I think, and I'm speaking on the spot here about something that I haven't really fully thought through, but if in that example, if Mitch were to say, yeah, here were the highlights of what happened in that committee, I think that would probably be fine. If Mitch then went a step further and said, here's what that committee said, and let me tell you how I feel about it, that would be problematic, because then you're talking to a member of this committee about something within the jurisdiction of this committee outside of a noticed meeting. If it's kind of just sticking to factually reciting what that other committee said, it's probably fine, you know, as kind of the hypersensitive, legal side of things, it would be certainly cleaner and nice to avoid that question in the first place by not having those communications that kind of tiptoe into these gray areas take place at all. But, I understand,
Obviously, and
listening to the entire meeting.
I foresee stuff like that happening obviously in social situations where, you're at some social event and it's, oh, this is what they talked about. And I mean,
Yeah.
I can't foresee that I'm assuming there's legal counsel representation on every DCA board, I'm assuming. And I can't imagine that those kinds of conversations don't happen. Whether
Sorry, go ahead.
legally they're permitted or not.
Well, that's
I
why.
think the other thing that,
Go ahead, Gary.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Reza.
Okay. I'm glad you mentioned social situations. It's possible that you may see each other at other, types of events and things. It's important to keep these rules in mind because you're bound by the same rules, whether it's a social function or, whatever it may be. There are rules in Bagley-Keene that say if you see each other at a social function and you're talking and it's not about something within the subject matter jurisdiction of your entity, that's fine. But if you're at a social function and you are talking about something within the subject matter jurisdiction of your entity, that's still a violation, even though, and does it happen? Yeah, I don't doubt that it probably does happen, but that's why, I'm here to impress upon you and hopefully the other legal counsels impress upon their respective entities. And I know that they do make, those efforts. It is a big deal to try to educate you, because as I've said again and again, I know this is not simple stuff and it's not totally intuitive. And there is very much that, what's the word? Just the kind of natural desire to have your normal conversations like you would. But that's why I appreciate the opportunity to kind of speak to this agenda item and clarify in the past that these are legal obligations that you take on as a member of a state government entity.
So I have another scenario. So let's say I'm a member of another committee in my own practice, and there's something that I wanted to bring to the group that was discussed in the NPAC or any of the BRN committee, and I'm quite not sure how to go about it. So I call you, Risa, and ask for your opinion. Can I actually, now is that a violation since I'm actually consulting with you? Would that be a violation of the Bagley-Keene Act?
I'm not quite sure I fully understood the scenario where you said you're a member of a committee, but I think I can still answer pretty clearly. You can always call me or email me and ask me, is this okay? I'm not a member of this committee. I'm not a member of the board. Right. So communications with me are never going to be a violation of Bagley-Keene. On the other hand, if you contact me and say, hey, this is what I think, can you tell Mitch and the rest of the committee, that's a problem, but I don't think you'd say that. You're always welcome to reach out to me or board staff. None of us are members of the committee or the board.
Yeah, I get it. So I just wanted to make sure I understood it fully. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And I'd always, prefer that you err on the side of caution. And if there is some uncertainty, do reach out before, assuming that it's okay. That's perfectly fine and very much appreciated, actually.
And Alyssa.
I think that, and I want to be sensitive to the time because I'm not sure how much more we have to accomplish today in the committee. And I just, in reading the definition, whereas, I think there's many ways to interpret the law and, spirit versus the letter of the law. And one of the things that you highlighted, which kind of reveals what is the intent of the law, is the issue around hearing something, hearing at the same time and place. So recording is not the same time and place, right? So that's not part of hearing. But if you are actually listening, or if anybody from the Board of Registered Nursing is listening to what we're doing, then aren't we then in violation? If, let's just say, a board member from the BRN is listening right now, isn't that then a violation of the Bagley Keene?
No, because board members are not members of this committee.
But they have
So
purview.
It's
they have
not a
purview
board
over-
meeting.
But they have purview over our practice.
right, but so Mitch, let me just finish
Oh,
this
sure.
question. So then I get where, that there may be, depending on charters, that there may be overlap between the APRN Advisory Committee and NMAC and NPAC. Depending on how the charter is written, then creates that, from what I'm hearing you say, then it creates that potential item which that is being discussed in the state body within the subject matter jurisdiction. So I guess that's where I'm getting a little stuck, and if there's a way to get around it, maybe that's clarification in the charter of the APRN committee, advisory committee charter.
So again, on the spot here, but I don't, even if all of the board members were listening to this committee right now, they're only hearing the members of this committee discuss and deliberate. They're not hearing the other members of their entity discuss or deliberate. On the other hand, if a member of the board chimed in during public comment of this committee, then you've got a member of the board speaking during this committee and potentially all the other members of the board listening and hearing what that member of the board is saying. Then you've got communications within the board. So the board members can listen into this committee the same way that you all can listen into the other committees. It's when you participate and make comment that we run into the problem. Because again, if board members are listening to this committee, they're hearing the discussions and deliberations from members of this committee of which they are not a part of. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It makes sense conceptually, but when you have the definition, and maybe you can pull the definition up again, it's the conjunction is or, and it's not any other conjunction. So it says that, meeting includes any congregation of a majority of the members of a state body. So state body is defined in another section in the government code. At the same time and place to hear, discuss, or deliberate. So hearing is an impermissible activity, if I'm reading that correctly.
But hearing the members of that body. So it has to do with
let's say
the entity that you're a member of. Also, if I can highlight this next section, a majority of the members of a state body shall not, outside of a meeting authorized by this chapter, use a series of communications of any kind, directly or through intermediaries, to discuss, deliberate, or take action. So a series of communications of any kind. And another example, just to kind of illustrate how far this goes. Let's say you all are friends on Facebook or a social media platform, and you make a comment there about how you feel about a matter within the jurisdiction of this committee. That's been interpreted to be potentially a problem because the other members of this committee can go there and see your comment and hear the type of, you making a comment about something within the purview of this committee. And also, I just want to reiterate, you mentioned, there's different ways to kind of interpret the law. So I want to reiterate that this is not my personal reading of it. This is consistent with the interpretation that's applied to, as far as I know, all DCA boards and bureaus. So I'm not trying to impose on you my own very strict reading of this. It's how this is applied in practice.
Right. And I'm not saying that it's you. I'm just saying you're the bearer of the news. So I want to be clear about that. I just, again, the hearing, not hearing in terms of like a formal legal hearing, but hearing something is included in that. And then when you said that even though the board members are not members of this committee, then then I'm just trying to figure out where the sticking point is, because a member of this committee is not a member of NPAC. So is the sticking point then the charter that then creates the subject matter jurisdiction for members of this committee or any other advisory committee?
So, I mean, in my opinion, in a small way, there is some relevance of the charter. I gave the example earlier of a member of the NPAC going into the nurse midwifery meeting. Under the NPAC's charter, they're limited to nurse practitioner issues. So them going into an NMAC meeting and talking about midwifery related issues is not a violation, because they're not talking about something that's within the purview of the entity that they belong to. The sticking point to me is and it is, in a way, it's kind of a bigger issue with this committee than it is with the other committees, because yours touches on multiple APRN groups. So the way that the NPAC member can go into NMAC and talk as a public member about midwifery issues, you don't have the same benefit, because your committee is broader and deals with midwifery, nurse practitioner, CNS, CRNAs. So that's part of the difference, and it's, that's the way it is. To me, the big sticking point. So it does, in a way, the charter, it is relevant, and hopefully the example I gave about nurse practitioners going into NMAC, that hopefully helped illustrate it. But really the kind of sticking point is participating and discussing something during those meetings. So you all could listen to the other committees, and that's fine. The board members could listen to each of these committees, and that's fine. But if a board member were to come into this committee and start making comments during public comment, then we run into the risk that other members of the board itself have heard that comment, and that's what triggers a, quote, meeting of the board during the APRN advisory committee, and that, quote, meeting of the board will not have been properly noticed, and that's where we run into a violation. So I did give an example of one way to kind of circumvent that by noticing a meeting of, say, the board and the APRN. If, for example, members of this committee were to, want to go into a board meeting and directly address the board members, that's one way to handle that, where it is a meeting of the APRN advisory committee, but that's fine because we've planned it and we've noticed it, and everything is, compliant with Bagley-Keene.
Now, I like that idea. I think that, as things are coming up fast and furious, especially as NMAC and NPAC are getting their, the work that they're expected to do off the ground for their two bills, now that our statutes, isn't it only a violation of Bagley-Keene if more than two of the same committee speak?
Yeah, so it does read a majority of the members of a state body, but again, this is how it's applied across all the boards. I'm not real keen on saying, okay, there was only two, so it's fine here. I don't know, for one, whether there are other members. None of us can. One way to observe these meetings is this WebEx where we have a list of who's on the line. But there is also a webcast where we don't know who's observing that. That's one problem. Secondly is, again, these are recorded and posted online, and even after the fact, if somebody views the recording, that could be construed as a series of communications of any kind. You know, even though only 2 members were on the spot hearing it at the time, it's, you know, once you post it online and then other members hear it after the fact, that could be construed as a series of communications. So it's I think too risky to try to, just say it's okay because there was only 2 members and we didn't cross that threshold that triggered a quote meeting. It's too easy for that to. I mean, the only way to know for sure that we haven't violated it is to not go there and not try to keep it to 2 or less.
Can I make a recommendation here that this is following a similar pattern that when we've discussed this issue before, that perhaps based on what you have suggested, Raisa, that we create a summary of those couple of options that you've described and somehow build those into opportunities for inter-committee communication within the BRN, just to ease this particular issue. And then any additional questions that committee members have around language and interpretation, that they can just direct those directly to you if that's amenable to everyone.
That's fine with me. So to be specific, what is the ask for me?
So the ask is, what are the internal, or what are the communication opportunities for this committee to communicate with other committees in the board, period? What are the options?
And you'd like that in writing, or how? I mean, what am I supposed to do with that?
In writing would be great.
Well, I don't mind doing that. It's been discussed. The minutes might reflect it. I'm not sure what even to do with the writing.
Okay. Well, if the minutes clearly reflect your suggested options, then that should be adequate for the meeting minutes.
Okay. And I see you, Alyssa, but so having kind of discussed those, and hopefully there was an understanding at least of those options that were brought forward. If there is an issue that seems like it's appropriate for that, then that's where the communication should happen with staff and with myself, and we can those options I mentioned just require some coordination and planning, and that's all. So if there are issues that seem appropriate for that, just let us know and we can plan it out and try to coordinate it. And it's not something that we've, at least in my experience, done before, but that shouldn't stop us from going forward. So we'll just have to kind of figure it out and make it happen.
Right.
So yeah,
for
an issue.
I was just going to say that, sorry to interrupt, but this would also be relevant to written communication, and so and which had created some challenges for how we created the document, the summary document, because it required all of the committee members to send whatever they wanted in that document to Jeanette so that she could collate all of those documents, or collate all those comments and content. It made editing very difficult, so to speak. So, but I just wanted to make sure that, as we sort of describe how we can best communicate these sort of things, in that particular case, I think as we did with the FAQs and advisories, is you create a subcommittee and the committee agrees that these two individuals on this committee will generate like documents such as that, so they can work together with BRN staff and create that document on behalf of the committee, and then bring that document forward to the committee for editing and approval in a public way. So,
and if I could just, again, Alyssa, I saw you, but real quick on that point. So what we've done with other committees, and I think with this committee in the past, like you said, if you create a subcommittee of 2 members of this committee, they can discuss things offline without triggering a quote meeting. And that is a way to allow some collaboration to happen outside of the meeting. Where we run into a problem is those 2 designated members of that subcommittee then send their thoughts offline to someone else on the committee outside of a meeting. That's an issue. So that's why I asked, on that letter, for example, that it go through board staff rather than a particular member of this committee kind of handling the assembly of all the thoughts and comments and everything. And I am fully with you. It's not the simplest or most efficient way to do it. That's not really the Bagley-Keene Act was not really implemented to make things simpler or more efficient. It's for the public policy of ensuring that things are done, in the light of day, with the public being able to observe and participate in the process. So yeah, it is a little tougher to do it that way, and it does require more noticed meetings and all that and planning, but that's the structure of the law that we have to operate under.
right. Alyssa, if we'll make yours the last comment and then we can move on.
Yeah, I'm not going to belabor it. No, I appreciate the options, and it would be nice to see them in writing, as well as what Mitch just talked about the written communication. So I appreciate all the clarification. And basically, I tell people, they can go to the meeting and don't talk. If they're on one of these committees, so they can hear. But the minute someone talks, it's uncomfortable. So thank you. That's it.
Thank you all. And I made a note. I'll work on something to kind of summarize.
Thanks, Risa. There's no action on this particular agenda item, so we can open it up for public comment at this juncture. Mark?
Public comment now. I will be activating the question and answer feature. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comment. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Committee Chair Erickson, there are no public requests for comment. Would you like me to close this window?
You can close the window. Thank you, Mark. If it's okay with the committee, I just want to this particular agenda item will probably take the bulk of the remaining time. But I do want to make sure we get our meetings on the calendar. So if we could skip to 10.0, Mark, please. So we have opportunity for 3 committee meetings in 2022. And just a couple of clarifications for committee members, just to know that AIS content has to be submitted to the BRN staff at least a week prior to the actual date of the meeting, which is separate from the actual agenda approval. But just to remind people of that. So open up for discussion about when these meetings are and how we time them. Have the meetings of the board, of the practice committee, been posted for 2022 yet? Does anyone know?
Practice committee meetings were voted on with the board meeting schedule in August, I believe.
Okay, so they're posted. All the dates are already posted.
They're at least in the meeting materials that are posted online if they're not updated on the specific calendar.
Got it.
And then, did I hear you correctly on 10.0? You said 3 meetings. We have 2 meetings.
I think we had a vote and approval some time ago at a prior meeting for 3, but one of them was not in person.
Right.
That was a one-time vote for that year. I don't know that that was continued.
I don't know that it was, I don't recall it being defined by a particular calendar year, but I may be mistaken. I thought it was just per year.
The charter was, it specifically was stated that it's to meet semi-annually in Sacramento in person and by WebEx. That's what the charter is, and then the vote was for a one-time exception to do an additional teleconference meeting, which was approved for that.
Right, but was it just for that 1 year for 2021?
Calendars are voted on a per year basis.
Got it. Okay. I guess for starters, we can discuss whether we want a motion to do the same for this calendar year coming up in 2022. We can decide that motion later, but let's at least get our 2 meetings on the calendar for 2022.
Garrett, I went to the board meeting minutes materials, and it seems like the nursing practice committee first meeting will be on January 20th, 2022.
All right, well, that would probably be too early for us to align with.
Correct. The second one is April 21st, 2022. The third is June 23rd,
Okay.
2022. And then the last one is October 20.
Got it. Okay. So to make an alignment with, my suggestion is we use the April and the October meetings in terms of alignment, and then we can request in a motion for a third optional teleconference meeting around the June meeting. If that sounds appropriate for everyone. If we were to align with the April 21st meeting, we should probably have ours at the end of March to make sure we have materials ready. So that would be, if we stick to the Thursday schedule, that would be the 24th or the 31st.
Let me check. I'm just checking on holidays.
Mitch, the 31st of March happens to be CANP, the California Association for Nurse Practitioner Conference.
Okay, so that won't work.
I'm good on the 24th.
I'm good on the 24th.
24 sounds good.
Karen said 24th is good for her.
What day of the week is that?
A
Thursday.
Thursday.
And which month are we talking about?
March.
Oh, March. Okay, hold on, I'm sorry. Ah. I don't know when, let me just look and see when CAC announces. I think that's okay.
Is that okay with you, Jane?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, March 24th is okay for me, Alyssa.
Okay, so March 24th, and then October 20th. So similar kind of pattern, it would be towards the end of September, so like the 22nd to 29th.
And I'm good on both days, so whatever you
I
guys.
am, yeah, they're good for me too.
Karen,
Good for me too. 22nd sounds good.
okay. Garrett,
Um,
kind of hard to know so far in advance, but
um, yeah. I'm sorry. Can I look at just one thing? Sorry.
sure. No, you go ahead.
29th may work better for people who have regular meetings because it's like the 5th Thursday. But either okay for
Okay.
me.
But just to know that committee members will have to be very tight with their agenda requests and submission if we use the 29th.
All right.
Both days work for me.
Okay, shall we go with the 22nd? Gives us an extra week. Okay. All right. And then in terms of a third meeting, we'll just make a motion, a second motion around a request to the practice, I guess, to the practice committee to have the teleconference third meeting. Do we want to pick a date now where we can pick it at a subsequent meeting?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll pick it later.
Yeah.
Because it would be optional. So the motion before us is to select our 2022 biennial meeting for the APR and Advisory Committee, and they are currently March 24th and September 22nd. Do I have a second?
Karen
I'll
Carp.
second.
Oh, sorry, Karen Karp seconded. And then the second motion is to request from the practice committee a optional third teleconference meeting that to a date to be decided at a subsequent APR and advisory committee meeting.
Karen Carp, second.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, Mitch, do we have to have open comment before you make a second?
That's just for the motion. We'll vote on it after the public comment. We just had to make the motion so the public has something to comment on.
Okay, I'm sorry. So the motion is to have March 24th, September 22nd, and a third meeting that's teleconference at a date to be determined?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
You can open up for public comment, Mark.
Public comment now. I will be activating the question and answer feature. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Committee Chair Erickson, there are no public requests for comment. Would you like me to close this window?
You may close the window. Thank you, Mark. So now we will vote on the motion. And again, just to reiterate, is the two annual meetings for the year of 2022 for the APR and Advisory Committee are March 24th and September 22nd, with a request to the Practice Committee for an optional teleconference meeting at a date to be determined. And Mitchell Erickson votes yes. Karen?
Karen Carp, yes.
Alyssa Brown, yes.
Jane Perlis, yes.
Thank you, everyone. Motion passes. And now we can go back to discussion item 8.0. Just as a clarification about the agenda, I'm not quite sure how it got on there after my conversation with Raisa, but item 9.0 was supposed to be removed because it was kind of what I referenced during the public comment period. So I'm not sure how it ended up on the agenda, but just to know that that's not an item that we will discuss at this particular meeting.
That clarification, I'll let you know the process as to why it was left on the agenda. The agenda was posted prior to us receiving the AIS for the materials. And so we would have had to make an amendment to the agenda to remove it. And because of the 10-day posting period for Per Begley Keene, we chose not to do that. And so what the process is for that is exactly what we are doing right here, is explaining why 9.0 will not be covered at this meeting, and then we would just skip that agenda item.
Yes, and it'll be reposted on the agenda in March with the appropriate language. So 8.0 is just a report back. At our prior committee meeting, we broke into subcommittees to report back for the 4 APRN subcommittees on revisions related to FAQs and advisories in the BRN board's website that referenced each of those 4 committees. Anything that addresses NPs and midwifery practice will have to be forwarded to the NPAC committee for their review and approval. And then I'm assuming they have to send their approval or recommendations to the board. So I think we'll start, perhaps Alyssa and Garrett will start with the content related to CNS practice advisories, if that's okay with you two.
Sure, let me find it. Yeah, Garrett, I don't know if I sent it to you, but.
I think Garrett's version was the only one that was posted as a AIS, just because the content from both of you were together, but the part that you sent me, Alyssa, was too late to post to the
okay.
After the Friday deadline.
Okay.
But you can certainly discuss because they're related to the various entities
Sure.
that are described in the AIS that is posted. So I'll let you two decide how you want to handle it.
But we can just go down the list. We have very few for the CNSs.
Sure.
So, Garrett, do you want to start, or where is Garrett?
I'm right here.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure that I'm doing the right process. So I guess the first advisory that I reviewed was certification of clinical nurse specialist. And so I'm sorry, Mitch, just can I clarify the process of how we're supposed to do this? Am I supposed to pull it up and then speak to what my recommendation is?
Well, the public has access to the documents online if they want to review what you're talking about. So we don't need to pull it up on the screen. But if you and Alyssa want to provide a summary of your recommendations about each of the items you did review, then and then what would happen is we would approve them at this meeting and
Okay.
forward them to BRN staff.
Do you want to,
Um, uh,
like,
uh,
conference call? They have to know I'm
hang on a
logged
second.
in. Sorry.
That's okay.
Um,
And then I'm assuming then the BRN staff then post them.
You mentioned that it's in the materials or that it's available to the public. Can you just direct us, or at least me,
yeah, I don't see it, Mitch. It's not in the
Yeah.
materials.
under 8.0? Yeah, I don't see anything.
I submitted the document to the BRN. Everything went in.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why the BRN did not post it, but I sent it all.
I didn't see it either.
If it's not there, then in that case, if it is possible for Garrett to maybe screen share it or something so we can see.
It's not in the packet. Mitch, do you know who you sent that to?
And Jeanette,
And Jeanette?
I sent it to both. Yeah.
Okay.
Jeanette. But apparently it was too late. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, it was,
it was too late to post.
Mm-hmm.
Do you
know,
want me to?
I'm just seeing it now. I think it just loaded now. It wasn't there before, but I'm seeing it now, the AIS.
The AIS has been there, but there is supposed to be supportive materials
That's not
to
there.
follow the AIS. Macaulay is looking to see where that is at.
PDFs that I sent.
Okay. And then just for future reference, we will have a change of the liaison for this meeting. I know, Mitch, you have been working with Jeanette Wackerly, our supervising nursing education consultant, as a liaison for this meeting. And she is on here. Jeanette, if you wanted to notify them and unmute your microphone and let them know about the change in the liaison. And if you have that information, if you can get that to me, I can work and get that posted. Jeanette?
Muted.
She is still muted. I'm wondering if she is having some difficulty unmuting. Oh, there she is.
Am I live now?
You're live.
Terrible. I have it in an email. I don't have it in front of me right now. I can look for it and send it to you, I guess. I don't know. My mistake. I thought that it got onto the paperwork, but it didn't. I don't have, Alyssa, I got yours on Friday, last Friday, but it was too late to post, and that's what Mitch told me. So
Okay.
the one that Garrett did, I have. So let me look. Hang on.
Is it okay then if after Garrett posts his, I just give you anything extra that I have? I thought I sent you mine, Garrett, but I don't know if I did.
I didn't get yours, Alyssa.
This is Reza. What I would suggest is, if you want to discuss this agenda item, one, the documents that were sent to staff can see to it that those are posted on the website. Of course, that's not going to be immediate, but just so that they're available later on. Two, for the sake of right now, if it's possible to do a screen share the way that I did with the statutory text before, that'll at least get it in front of the committee and the public, and
just for your purposes, I sent them on Tuesday, October the 19th to Jeanette and to Macaulay. There are 6 documents, letters, FAQs, etc. There's quite a few documents I sent.
Mitch, I'm just looking at your name right now, so give me a minute.
Sure.
Have been located, the ones that Macaulay has, and she is putting forward to posting right now and is emailing them to Reza.
And I have them too now, but I don't know how to do that, so I'm glad Polly did.
All right.
Jeanette,
These
do you
are the
wanna
ones
share
that
your
Garrett sent.
Jeanette,
Just
do you
let
want
me
to
know.
share your news about tomorrow and that they'll be switching liaisons?
Yes, I am going to retire tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
So that's kind of an, and I'm backed into a lot of work that I've had to get done. Yes, I'm looking at them right now that Garrett sent.
So in the interest of time, Garrett, do you want to just sort of proceed while Macaulay loads these up? You're muted. Oh, there you are.
I don't see Garrett's name on this one that, Macaulay on the one that Garrett sent. So how should I forward it?
But I think Macaulay located them, I believe.
Okay, all right. Because I can't screen share. I don't know how to.
I can give you the titles of the documents that were located. General information for clinical nurse specialists, -Chan. Certification of clinical nurse specialist, -Chan. California Insurance Code, -Chan.
Those are them.
BRN FAQ NP 2021 updates. BRN certified clinical nurse specialist in the specialty psychiatric mental health nursing. Those are the ones that she was able to locate right now.
Yes.
And so
Sorry.
the ones that were sent directly to Jeanette, I do not believe that she has. When Jeanette has a moment, she will send them. These will not immediately populate on our website. We will send them over to our IT to have them posted. They do need to go through an ADA accommodations check and then request to have DCA migrate them to our website. So it will take a moment, but they will be up before the end of today.
And just to clarify, Loretta, the only documents that were to be posted were the ones that I sent to Macaulay.
Okay.
What Jeanette received, I always send everything to both of them just in case.
Yeah.
But what Jeanette received afterwards or prior to what I forwarded to Macaulay, I sort of took out the comments, etc. And then, because some people have trouble reading the document as it was posted. And then the one that Alyssa sent was beyond the posting date deadline.
So mine do have your notes in, so I will just erase them. Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's proceed. Oh, Alyssa?
Yeah, we were in the hospital last week. That's why I didn't get in on time. I'm sorry. What am I allowed to say or do while we're talking if this is not in the materials? What I
But
sent?
if it's relevant to the various documents that you both are going to talk about, so your content that you had submitted late, you can still talk about it because it's relevant to the various items. It's the same subject matter. So
Thank you.
sure. Okay. Garrett.
Thank you. And I want to thank the staff for sorting it out. And I also want to just take a moment of personal privilege to thank Jeanette Wackerly, supervising nursing education consultant, publicly. Jeanette has done an amazing job for nursing and for advanced practice nursing in the state of California. And actually, this is the first time I've heard that you're going to retire tomorrow. So I became a little verklempt. So this is shocking news to me. But Jeanette, I just want to thank you so much. You have worked tirelessly for all nurses and for the public protection. And I have learned a ton from you, and I am just so grateful. And so I am actually getting a little teary. But I think the next adventure that you're going to have after you retire tomorrow is going to be filled with wonder and excitement. And I'm sending you all my love. So thank you so much.
Thank you. That was very nice, Garrett. Makes me want to cry too. It's touching. Thank you very much.
I too just want to say, Jeanette, you and I have known each other for 100 years, I think. I really appreciate you and all the help and support and what you've done for all of us. And as Garrett says, for the public and protecting the public. So I wish you the best and good luck on your new adventures.
Thank you so much.
Jeanette, this is Karen Karp. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much on behalf of everything that you have done for the nurse anesthetists in the state of California and the APRNs and the RNs. I can't say enough for everything that you have done for all of us. We wish you well and lots of happiness in your retirement. And I will be thinking of you and I will miss you very, very much.
Well, thank you very much, Karen.
And of course, I've known for a while, but it wasn't my purview to share. But Jeanette has been an amazing partner in so many different ways, and hopefully her retirement will follow the same path of mine, which is not to really retire.
Nurses don't retire.
They don't.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, thank you all. It was lovely.
Same here.
Wow. Thanks. So moving on to more mundane things. The first one is certification of clinical nurse specialist, and just kind of asking to review. I looked for Business and Professions Code section 2718, and I couldn't find that. So maybe it was me. I just wanted to be clear. It could have been me that I couldn't find it, but I couldn't find it. So if we might need to change that.
Remember.
So the next thing that I noted down here in this first sentence is the BRN has accepted the standards of the National Association of Clinical Specialists Statement on CNS Practice and Education and AACN Essentials of Master's Education for Advanced Practice. I just wanted to make a note that we may want to make an edit to say the BRN has accepted the most recent additions, only because the title of the AACN Essentials is no longer AACN Essentials of Master's Education, but it's just AACN, the Essentials, Core Competencies for Professional Nursing Education. So that's just kind of to bring it up to current. In this this comment I wrote is that it is my perspective that we might need to delete the activities under the headings expert clinical practice, education, research, consultation, leadership, as I couldn't find these activities stated in statute or regulation.
Can I? Actually, they're in the Nurse Practice Act, so I was suggesting that we keep them. The same
The
language.
activities, Alyssa.
2838.2.
The activities. So works with staff to improve clinical care, uses advanced theoretical empirical knowledge. That's not in statute.
Oh, okay, those.
Expert clinical practice is absolutely in statute. Education is in statute. But all of the things that are underneath it, I couldn't find in statute.
Okay, so you just want to remove the things underneath. Okay, that's it.
Numbers 1 through 5 here and numbers 1 through 4, only because I couldn't find it.
Okay.
Unless if you found it, Alyssa.
I will look again because I worked on this originally, but I'll look and see if I have it anywhere else.
And if they're not, then I would recommend removing them.
I agree if they're not there.
Okay, great. And then the last thing is I just made updated changes to the references. So Mitch, are we supposed to make a motion or what do we do here?
Are these?
Oh, for some reason I can't hear you, Mitch.
I was being respectful and muted. So, so I think what we'll do is we'll review them in their entirety, and then we'll make a motion to approve the edits based on all of the documents that you submitted in the AIS,
Okay.
rather than going through every single document.
Okay. Great. So I'm going to share my next document. The next document is this one. I actually had no edits. It was the BRN certified clinical nurse specialist in the specialty psychiatric mental health nursing and BRN listed psychiatric mental health RN. I went through all of the different, I went through all of the different sections of the evidence code, the government code, the insurance code to make sure that they haven't changed and they have not changed. So my recommendation is not to make a change.
I agree.
Just a note of clarification for Loretta and the BRN staff. I believe the way we decided to handle this in moving forward is the CNS and CRNA recommended revisions would just go simply to the BRN staff. But you had mentioned, Loretta, about coming up with a standard workflow for how to do these every year, every couple of years. And as you know, that one was dated from 2001. Did you want to just redate these as reviewed and revised, and then whatever the date was that it was the BRN reposted? Does that make sense?
So that's actually very similar to the process that I think we would adopt, and that is these items, they have a numbering on the bottom of the pages. And based on those, we'll put those numberings into a schedule. Typically, like a healthcare system does, 3 years. Research materials is good for 5 years. So we would then decide whether we want to do a 3-year or a 5-year. And then based on that review cycle, we would schedule this out that these documents that we're just right now reviewed would be reviewed again in 3 years for accuracy and updates. And then we would put that date of review or revision on the bottom of the form so that everybody is clear that these are reviewed. Additionally, we would like to add to the website, once the revision process is decided, to actually share that revision process, to say this is the scheduling of them. And so that if people wanted to in advance send suggestions for revisions, they would know when they would be coming up for review, and then we would incorporate them at that point. And so just to really clean this process up for all of our forms that are on our website.
So Loretta, so that in this particular example that Garrett was just showing, like the date that's on the heading, that would go away and you would move the revision date to the bottom. Is that correct?
Garrett, are you able to share your screen real quick so I could speak to it?
Yeah,
That's
sorry.
psychiatric
give me
one.
just the-
Thank you. I
the
appreciate that.
psychiatric one. I'm sorry, let me pull up the psychiatric one really quickly.
Just so the public understands what we're suggesting here. So yeah, so where it says effective date.
So the effective date stays current, stays
Okay.
at the October 2001 because that is when this became effective. But on the bottom where it says NPR-B-42 and then has a date right there, what we would put is a review or revised or some sort of notice at that point. And then the date of, this meeting or whatever, when it goes to practice and accepted. And so then that way, although it was, effective 2001, the public is aware that it's been reviewed, it is still current, and they can then have that as reference that says this has gone on for the last 20 years and these are where it is and how it's current.
Perfect. All right. That's
I have
great.
a question about how we know when it will be reviewed again. Is there a way we can? I missed it. You may have said something.
What I had, and maybe I wasn't clear when I said that just now. We will be posting a review revision schedule on our website once we have it completely mapped out.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Garrett. You can move on to the third one.
Okay, great. Hold on, let me pull it up really quickly. So this one is the section of the Nurse Practice Act, or this is part of the California Insurance Code around life and disability insurance, payments and proceeds. So I went back to the insurance code and I looked all of this up, and all of these sections, and I didn't see any change to the statute. And so for me, I would say that this would have no changes.
I agree.
Thank you.
And then the last one is, pull it up. And I'm going to share. So this is an advisory that says general information for clinical nurse specialists regarding national certification. The following national organizations, associations have met the certification requirements that are equivalent to the board standards for clinical nurse specialist certification. And then I recommended to just cite, as other advisories have, pursuant to Business and Professions Code 2838.2 subsection B, and I would leave it to legal to double check that, just so that people know. What I did was I looked at all of the certifications. I'm sorry, go ahead. Alyssa, did you have something to say?
No.
Okay, sorry. So what I did was I looked and I added, because of the format, it looked like here under the American Nurses Association, American Nurses Credentialing Center, it had a list of the certifications in the following areas. And so what I did was I added that to the American Association of Critical Care Nurses, because they offer the CNS certification in adult gerontology, pediatric, and neonatal, so that it's consistently, the format is consistent. I also added the ANCC, all of the different certifications that are currently available, either as new or as recertification, because as many of us know, I'm sorry, Alyssa, go ahead.
I'm sorry, renewal, right? Yeah.
Yes, new and renewal, because we know that some CNSs have been certified for many years, and their certification is still valid so long as they keep their renewal criteria up. And so, with that being said, ANCC only offers the initial certification in adult gerontology CNS. However, they have renewal certifications, so you had to have already been certified in all of these different CNS specialties. So it is my recommendation that this list be updated to be current. This one for oncology, again, ONCC only offers renewal certification for the advanced oncology CNS, so that should be, again, listed. Sorry, and I skipped over something. The Hospice and Palliative Credentialing Center offers the following clinical nurse specialist certification. It's the Advanced Certified Hospice and Palliative Nurse. And then there are two others that, I'm sorry.
Gary, just a quick question about the Hospice and Palliative Credentialing Center. Is that an approved credentialing center by the BRN? Just a clarification.
It's an approved credentialing center according to the statute, which says that if they are accredited by the American Board of Nursing Specialties or the National, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to, there's two.
Go ahead.
Sorry. There are two credentialing bodies that credential certification corporations, and it says that if they're recognized by one or the other, then the BRN will accept that. And so the Hospice and Palliative Credentialing Center is recognized by, I believe it's the American Board of Nursing Specialties, ABNS.
Perfect. Thanks.
This is Reza. I'm wrapping my head around that. Is that something that theoretically could change without us? So say we post, this update. Theoretically, if one of those two entities, I guess, decertifies or whatever, one of these entities in the list, is that something that could happen?
Yes.
And I'm just thinking, maybe it's worthwhile to put a statement to, refer to those certification entities for the latest list or something like that. Just so we don't, a change doesn't go by under the radar and our document is not.
But I guess my question, Raisa, would that not be relevant to any of these advisories? Because like legislation might change one of them. And so that's the purpose of the date. It's like, it's
Sure.
whatever is the, based on current date revision and review, because that would be the case for any of these.
That's right. Any of them can change.
Yeah, that's true. And I don't know that, for legislation, we need to tell everybody to check the current status of legislation. I think that's pretty, that goes without saying. And you're right, the notation at the bottom is only as current as that. So I don't know, maybe we can just kind of think offline whether there's any need to address that particular issue with this document.
Or how, because it can change tomorrow. So who and how do we notice? And, it's so iffy.
I mean, if we use the process map that Loretta had suggested, which is every 3 years, I mean, much can happen in 3 years. So I guess the question is, as things come up, is there a supplementary process that says, the BRN can update these, in between those 3-year revision periods, simply because it makes sense and provides clarification to the public?
To that.
Yeah, I think if we have information that necessitates a change to one of these, better that we deal with that sooner than waiting till the 3-year
Agreed
period goes by. But yeah, I was gonna, after we go through these documents, I thought it'd be, I was gonna just speak to the process. So I'll wait. I'll hold my comments till we're done.
Perfect.
Put a note here, Reza, just so that we don't lose your comment. And it's absolutely not the right sentence, but I think it's just a placeholder.
Great, thank you.
And I will send this, I guess, Loretta, I'll send this to Macaulay. Or I'm sorry, so who is our liaison now? Now that Jeanette's retiring tomorrow?
It will be Macaulay.
Okay, thanks. I didn't want to assume that it was
at some
Macaulay.
point have updated liaisons for all of our advisory and board committees. We just haven't gotten to that yet.
No problem. So Macaulay, I'll just send this to you so that you can have this one comment, and then I'll leave it to the staff to figure out what to do next.
You have more, right?
Yeah. Yes, and so ONCC, the Oncology Nursing Certification Corporation, again has, following again that same format. The Orthopedic Nurses Certification Board also offers a CNS certification, and it is accredited by the national accreditation body. And then the last one is the Wound Ostomy Continence Nursing Certification Board.
Garrett, can I interrupt you? Because I looked up the orthopedic one again, and it says it's just for renewal, or it's for people who they may use their advanced practice clinical nurse specialist certified OCNS-C if they've passed the exam and have previously did and maintained their credentials through continuing education. So I guess it still exists. It's just a different format. Okay, go on.
Okay. The Wound Ostomy Continence Nurses Association has CNS certification in these following permutations. I didn't realize that wound ostomy continence was so complex, but you can be certified in one or more of the specialties. And they do again meet the requirements as set forth in Business and Professions Code 2838.2 subsection B.
Okay, I'll talk to you.
So that's all I have for this one.
Just the only addition with the woundostomy one, it can be a CNS, NP, CRNA, or CNM because they don't specify, it just says advanced practice. So the others may want to add it to their advisories. And they have to have been certified at a general woundostomy continence level before. And I think, let me see if there is
I
anything
think
else.
the main issue here is just letting the public know that they can look at this. So
Sure.
it's not the intent, in my opinion, for this to discuss the qualifications for certification.
Okay, and then
Can go to the link.
the link, yeah.
Yeah.
And then the advanced practice registered nurse school bus driver, did you look at that or?
No, I'm sorry, I missed the school bus driver.
There's a school bus driver APRN certification.
No, medical exam, they can certify.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry.
So it's on there and it can stay the way it is, just
Okay.
that we reviewed it. Now,
Sorry.
I have a question because I came up with a number of other things for CNSs that.
Alyssa,
we
I'm
might-
sorry. Before we move on, can we is it okay that we close this one out then? Okay, because that's actually all that I have. So I'm not sure if we can publicly talk about your ones.
We'll have to, as I mentioned, communicated, we'll put those, because this is going to be an ongoing process, because that was viewed as our one of our mandates to really help the BRN in reviewing and revising these based on our professional backgrounds. So we will obviously be probably addressing these for some time over subsequent meetings. But Alyssa, those that were not posted, we will roll over to the next meeting and we'll just carry on, same process, but carry on. And then what we'll do is we'll post yours as materials on the next meeting.
Yeah.
And then you can go through those just as Garrett did. Raisa, you had wanted, before we end this discussion around the CNSs, you wanted to say something.
I was just going to say on a path forward with these, because some of us are kind of just seeing them now, and it doesn't sound like, Garrett walked us through the changes or the non-changes, and didn't sound like there was any concern there. But just, I presume that you all might be making a motion to approve these as Garrett suggested that they be modified. And if that's the case, then maybe just also delegate. I'd like to just take a skim through, and Garrett said there were some pieces that maybe legal might want to take a look at. And so I can do that, and I can, you can delegate to Garrett or whoever you'd like that I can confer with if there are any issues, and if not, then it can go ahead and proceed to the next step.
I'm going to guess, Loretta, that the way this would work is that if Macaulay is now going to be the liaison, that she would take these documents and then they would be processed through BRN staff, but obviously they would include Raisa in their review, I'm assuming.
updates would be made on recommendation. We would send it to Reza. He would give the legal approval before they would be updated and posted to our website.
Perfect.
And then if on his review or executive management review, we found that it'd be pertinent to put it in front of the board prior to posting, then it would be put in front of a board and the board would then vote to post an update. Especially those would be more pertinent to advisory statements, et cetera.
That works great. And then in terms of those that we address in this committee that are relevant to CNM and NP practice, we would just send those to Macaulay so that they can get on the agenda. And as Raisa has pointed out in the past, in the earlier discussion, what we could do as a representative from this committee would then be publicly would be publicly noted on their other committee's agenda that they would, because there may be questions from those committees about the recommendations that were being forwarded from the APRN committee to, say, the NMAC, for example, for them to address, prove, etc. I'm assuming that would be an acceptable practice or process.
We would go through an established process to get any NPAC or NMAC materials to that committee so that they can weigh in as per what was outlined in the new statute and then move forward that way.
Perfect. All right. So I'd like to therefore make a motion that we approve these revisions to these particular submitted FAQ advisories so that they can be processed through BRN staff methodology or whatever you want to call it.
As edited, right?
As edited, correct.
Karen
second.
second.
Karen Cart second. Sorry, Garrett.
It's okay.
And then we'll open. I want to go before we. I'd like to proceed still with. Actually, we only have 5 minutes. I'm sorry, Jane. I don't think we're going to have time to get to the NP items that we have because we only have 5 minutes, and they're going to be lengthy as well. And then I know that Karen and Sandra are going to work on the CRNA items for the next board meeting as well. So if the committee is okay with it, we'll kind of hold at this juncture and move further discussion to the next agenda, but we'll vote on this particular, these revision and edits as they were made.
I just have a question.
Sure.
Do you want me to, because I sent you a completely different format. Would you like me to do the same format like Garrett did, so it's right on the document itself?
It's helpful. I think the way Garrett did it makes it very clear to
Right,
the
yeah.
public, like what it is we want to change. So you might want to just, you can highlight the language, like color it, whatever process you want to use, Jane, is perfectly fine.
I'll be
And
happy to do that because since I didn't really speak to you in detail about how
Right.
it's supposed to be done, so I'll be happy to do that.
Perfect. And just for the committee to know that Charlotte was she was the subcommittee, but was unable to participate in the process. So Jane did. So just FYI. Thank you, Jane.
You're welcome.
So we'll open it up for public comment at this point, please, Mark.
We will be opening for public comment now. I will be activating the question and answer feature. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember, you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Jeannie Meyer would like to make a comment. 1 second, please. Go ahead, Ms. Meyer.
It's Jeannie Meyer. I am a palliative care CNS. I also hold the critical care CCNS certification. I just want to thank this committee and Garrett in particular for recognizing the ACHPN certification as being of value. It's been a long time coming. The exam is extremely stringent. The standards are very high to maintain. So I just wanted to express my appreciation and relief that this was happening. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jeannie, for the comments. It's very generous.
Committee Chair Erickson, there are no other public requests for comment. Would you like me to close this window?
I would like to close the window. Thank you, Mark. And so I would like to personally thank Alyssa and Garrett so much for their work on this, because I know it's not easy to go through all these documents and then make the revisions. And Jane, thank you in advance, and we'll go through yours next meeting. So the motion is to accept these revisions and edits as edited to be forwarded to BRN staff and legal review. And we had a second already, which was Karen, and Erickson votes yes.
Jane Perlis, yes.
Karen?
Karp, yes.
Thank you, Karen. And our last agenda item. Which is 11.0 and is called adjournment.
2 p.m. Great job, Mitch.
All right, everyone. And thank you so much for public participation. Of course, without the public, these are not very valuable endeavors. So we appreciate public comment and requests for future agenda items. So thank you to the committee members. Thank you to BRN staff and Mark, of course. And we will
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Jen.
We'll see you all in March. Have a wonderful holiday season, everyone. And Jeanette, you know, big hugs. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, same from here, Jeanette.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I had a question, Loretta, just for a second before you go. So is there going to be a clinical liaison at the BRN for us, or just Macaulay?
Mean by clinical liaison?
Someone with a nursing background.
Not necessarily. What we're finding is a lot of these duties that the liaisons perform are mostly clerical in nature. So we actually, Macaulay is way too overqualified as well, being our chief of licensing, who actually is Jeanette's supervisor. So it's not even appropriate for Macaulay to do it, but Macaulay is jumping in. She's fantastically resourceful and amazingly helpful.
Perfect.
So we will be looking for some staff that have the ability to be the liaison that would help with the clerical duties that are needed in gathering these documents, sending reminders, scheduling meetings, et cetera, et cetera. And then if there is specific content that would need a subject matter expert to chime in, then we would find somebody that would be an SME for that particular content and then send it to that person at that moment. But again, a lot of these really do not require a nursing background in order to gather all of the materials and put them all into some kind of format. So hopefully that helped to answer your question. And Macaulay, if you're on hearing this, I promise you won't have to do this forever. We will find somebody that can manage these, because we definitely use Macaulay in ways that really could be, she could be of benefit in other areas.
So we could request to Macaulay or whoever supports her for an SME in regards, because one of the things
Yes.
obviously I've appreciated over the years is obviously Jeanette's clinical background in terms of addressing various issues at the BRN that have clinical relevance that are not administrative in nature.
Absolutely. And we have nursing education consultants employed with our board. I'm an RN. We do have 5 RNs on our board. So we do have a lot of nursing subject matter experts here available to us to be able to delegate this out. So we're happy to continue to offer any of those services we can. And then just put a call out. We're always interested in people who want to come and work as a nursing education consultant. We do have several vacancies, and as you know, we will have a new vacancy tomorrow for a supervising nursing education consultant. So if anybody is interested, please reach out, let us know, and we will guide you to the application process.
Thank you, Loretta. All right. Good day, everyone.
Good day.